Good morning. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the Geosymposium session on Very High Resolution Earth Observation Data and its role in disaster risk reduction, early warning, and resilience. My name is Marianne Cutney. I am the Director of International Activities for NOAA's National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge Bapom, who organized and helped shape this important session and dialogue. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, he is unable to join us today. This conversation reflects a great deal of work and coordination across the GEO community, and I'd like to recognize Bapom's leadership in bringing us together for this discussion. I would also like to ask for your patience. I am stepping in on relatively short notice, so we're going to do our best here to fill in. As we begin, very high resolution Earth observations are no longer a niche capability. As an increasingly important infrastructure for disaster response, environmental monitoring, urban planning, and water and food security. This discussion is also well aligned with GEO's post-25 strategy, Earth Intelligence for All, and with the 2023 Cape Town GEO Ministerial Declaration, both of which call on GEO to strengthen operational Earth intelligence, expand access to Earth observation capabilities, and accelerate implementation partnerships that support resilience. These documents give GEO a mandate to advance data access and help facilitate the frameworks, partnerships, and infrastructure necessary to translate Earth observations into operational societal benefit. At the same time, the GEO community is telling us very clearly that access and operational use remain fragmented, especially across developing countries and operational implementation environments. The preliminary GEO VHR survey results included 109 respondents spanning 56 countries and the European Union, with more than 70% representing developing country perspectives, and a vast majority of respondents indicating they already use VHR imagery with strong demand for sub-meter and near real-time access. But the dominant barriers remain in cost, licensing, and scalable processing infrastructure. This means the discussion today is not simply about imagery access. It is about how GEO can help translate VHR Earth observation into operational Earth intelligence and resilient outcomes. GEO's unique role is to help coordinate providers, users, and operational communities into more effective implementation frameworks. We have an outstanding panel today representing multiple parts of the GEO ecosystem, from governance and operational implementation to providers, financing mechanisms, and international coordination. First, we are joined by Amos Kaboba from Ghana, who brings perspectives from GEO governance, AfriGEO, the GEO Work Program, implementation activities focused on operational environmental application. We are pleased to have Laurent Zaran, a leader from the Earth Observations for Disaster Risk Management and the broader UN community, including efforts to strengthen international cooperation around access to VHR Earth observation imagery for disaster risk management. From the national implementation perspective, we have Virgilio Benavides from Ecuador, who brings experience from an early warnings for all implementation environment, including water sustainability, disaster risk reduction, and risk transfer applications. We are also joined by Fanghong Ye, or Helen, from China, bringing perspectives on international cooperation and capacity building efforts supporting GEO members and regional communities. And we have Annika Huck from the European Space Imaging, representing commercial and public sector coordination, including experience working with multiple satellite operators, supporting GEO-related operational access mechanisms to GeoGLAM via the Copernicus program, and the International Charter Space and Major Disasters via ESA's third-party missions activities. Unfortunately, Andrew Zolli from Planet is unable to join us live today, but he has provided pre-recorded remarks reflecting the provider perspective on scalable partnerships and public good access to VHR Earth observation data. And then finally, we are joined by John Harding. John is the Director of the Climate Risk and Early Warning Systems, CREWS, Secretariat, who brings the financing and implementation perspective through work supporting disaster risk reduction and early warnings for all initiatives. We have a very full panel. We have also reserved time at the end of the session for your questions and comments, so I encourage you to think about your own organizational, national, and regional perspectives on barriers and success stories, as well as implementation needs, and how GEO could help advance access and usability. Because we have a very full program, I will ask both our panelists, as well as anyone making interventions during the audience engagement section, to be considerate of one another. Keeping interventions concise will allow us to cover all of the materials, as well as hear from as many of you as possible. Most importantly, because we are what is standing between you and lunch. So with that, we will begin and open the roundtable. As we begin our discussion, we want to understand what the GEO community is telling us about operational demand, barriers, and implementation realities to VHR imagery. Amos, what surprised you most from the GEO VHR survey findings?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think, first of all, I want to reiterate that this survey was timely and very important. And I also want to thank the Secretariat for taking up that initiative. So to the question, what is surprising when you look at the survey is that about 70% of the respondents are already in different ways using VHR. So, which means that there is already an opportunity already within the community. But what is also striking is that when you also look at the focus areas or the application areas, it goes beyond disaster risk reduction. That is also another interesting part. You could see that from the survey, almost all the focus areas from agri to disaster and all the different areas is showing almost like 49, 50% in all the areas. So which means that in terms of the use for the different focus areas, there is a need. And also the fact that there is also the issue of the fact that among the community, there is already knowledge about it and people are already making some use about it. Thank you.
Great. And we are looking to get some slides up that'll show you, have a snapshot of the survey results. So as the Secretariat works on that, I will ask you, Amos. So from your perspective, what do the findings suggest about the shift from research use cases to operational implementation? Beginning with where we are seeing operational demand start to move, and then discussing what those findings suggest.
Okay, back to you.
Back to you.
All right. Okay, so if you look at least, I'm happy now that the slides are up. Now you will see that in terms of one, there are two critical areas. One, there's a strong demand for high spatial resolution. If you look at it, because between 2 to 5 meters, there is almost 30%. And when you also look at, for example, less than a meter resolution, so if you compare, we are looking at 60% of the respondents are saying that it is important we have very high spatial resolution for the different aspects, whether it's about agriculture, it's about flood mapping, and what have you. Now, what is also interesting is to look at what frequency is this data required. So when you look at the survey too, you will see that when you look at all the different, whether it is about daily, it's about weekly, and you do the statistics, you see that almost half of the respondents are saying that every week they will require some access to this particular data. So which also tie to the fact that one, weekly is on a weekly basis is needed, and also on the other side that high spatial resolution is also needed. Now, what is also interesting, which is not covered by your question, but I want to mention it, is the fact that during some of the breaks, what we realize is that some new people, private companies and others are here because they saw that this section is there and they want to find a possibility to contribute to it, which is more on not the spatial, the high spatial, but also looking at the spectral resolution. So that is also another aspect that we should take note of. Thank you.
You talked a little bit about the sub-meter demand. Is there other information about what users are still unable to do today that we can draw from the survey?
Yes. Now, when you look at it, and also being a user from the other side, you see that first of all, there is some people are using it. There is demand. 70% are trying to use it. Now, but when you look at, for example, how easily this can be used in the various communities, then it brings us to 3 dimensions. One is how to be able to get the access. And one of the barriers in allowing users to be able to get this is the issue of cost. One is the issue of cost, and almost 75% of the respondents are saying that, okay, can GEO, as a convening body, come out with a mechanism that can help them to have this access? So, and that is why you see that most of the respondents are also saying that at least 78% are saying, can GEO come in with a mechanism to coordinate this, to make sure that they can have the access which they need on daily basis, on weekly basis. But you also look at the other side. To have access and to have the ability to use this high resolution data require a lot of expertise. And when you look at the SP, it means capacity building is needed. Capacity building is key. The ability to process this is also key. Now, coming from some of us, our countries where internet downloads and all this is a challenge. So it means that the ability to have analysis-ready data also becomes one of them, which is showing in our statistics. Almost 77% are saying that this is critical. The need for capacity, the need for a kind of a platform that can easily allow maybe a certain level 2 or level 3 that allows for the uptake also becomes very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurent, the survey makes clear that imagery access alone is insufficient. Operational coordination mechanisms also matter. From a disaster risk management perspective, where is VHR becoming operationally indispensable?
Thank you. Well, I think, as you saw on the slide, I'm leading the UN SPIDER program within the UN. This is our UN dedicated program connecting space technologies with disaster management experts around the world. And in the last 15 years or so, we've visited about 55 countries at their request to provide advice to assess their needs and their ways of using these technologies. And everywhere we go, we see that demand. I think, and I liked seeing those survey slides. In fact, I don't like seeing the survey slides because there are still some barriers, but it kind of reflects what we also see in the countries when we visit. And clearly there's a high demand for very high resolution imagery. In many cases, when we talk about disaster management, it's about assessing the impact of disasters on people, on populated areas, obviously. When you do that, when you want to do that assessment, you need the very high resolution data. You need to do that damage assessment after an earthquake, after a flood. You need to be able to also warn or forecast the impact of flash flooding or other such disaster events at a very high resolution, so that you can go down to the building level and assess what could be affected and how. You cannot do this without very high resolution imagery. And we also see the need, especially in the last few years, in a lot of countries, to have these kind of 3D replicas of their vulnerable areas. So those digital twins we keep talking about, so that they can make those scenarios to study those potential impact scenarios on their, especially in populated areas. And we see here a slide, an example of what we did in 2024 together with the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites after a visit to Tonga, where we saw that need. We developed very quickly, in about 2 months, a digital twin of the main island, Tonga Tapu, purely using satellite imagery and satellite-derived elevation data, using, of course, AI algorithms to create the building inventory, to build the 3D models, and to create also those realistic objects. So this is just one example of what we can do with very high resolution data. Again, you need to go as high as possible. We use the 15-centimeter data from Pleiades for this. And obviously, I would believe all vulnerable areas around the world would need something like this done. And that's where we see the need, especially in the next years, trying to focus more and more on this, this work. Thank you.
Can you also explain? Thank you. Can you also explain the UN IPEO, the Interagency Secretariat on the Procurement of Earth Observation Imagery concept, and why coordination mechanisms like this matter operationally?
Sure. In the UN context, we set up a first so-called system contract with a commercial provider in 2005. That's 21 years ago. At that time, it was Digital Globe and it was Spot Image. Now the name's changed. But that's when we first set up a framework contract for the UN system to purchase very high resolution imagery in a much more efficient way at a lower cost. We also at that time negotiated certain licensing conditions with those companies that would allow the broad sharing of the data. So once we purchased it, the data would be accessible to all the UN operational agencies, to the peacekeeping missions on the ground, and so on. So the license allowed wide sharing of the data across agencies, but also in some cases with the countries targeted or supported. So we saw that as something that needs to be expanded on, especially that if in the past 20, 15 years ago, we worked with 2, 3 companies at most. Now, potentially, there's more than 200 companies out there that are able and willing to sell very high resolution commercial data to us, and they are coming from all continents. So we have realized after a lot of struggles in this sense, it took us usually 2 years to set up one contract. So you cannot have 400 years to set up 200 contracts. Obviously, we need to change something on that. And that's where we propose this approach where we would build up a dedicated team within the office. It's within the scope of our mandate within the UN to build such an interagency hub, not only to improve on the procurement and on the contracting and on negotiating licenses, but also on then trying to aggregate demand, bring down the cost as much as we can, and do this in a dedicated setup. We estimate that we can probably bring down the cost of the imagery up to 30% easily, but we can also pass on that benefit to the countries we are supporting. So of course I can talk a lot more about this, but I know time's up, so I'm happy to follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question for Virgilio. From the perspective of an implementing country working on early warnings for all, where does VHR imagery create the most operational value today?
Well, thanks for the question, and I'm really happy to be here, excited also. Well, the most usual use case in Ecuador is emergency mapping, where you have a picture from Copernicus, last activation we had over there, and a large flood in Babahoyo. But one of the things over there is that we're always expecting the response action. One of the things we look forward is for the preventive action. See if we can get those hazard mapping, vulnerabilities mapping, and exposure analysis for land use and planning instead of waiting for the response action. So one of those very high resolution imagery uses is that the disaster risk reduction focus on where it could help in the early warning for all initiative. Also, another thing that we're having in the country is it's pilots for parametric insurance, where you have even though these are meteorological triggers for drought and flood, very high resolution imagery will help a lot if we can focus on those spaces through this is through algorithmic confirmation. So there's no heritage need, there's no special assessment on the ground, and this is automatic. It's not immediate, but it's automatic. So you don't need a lot of people there, just wait a little bit so you get your confirmation, and the people who are on the ground, the plots of land. So there's a big example over there. So we have the rice provinces, rice plots that are being covered at the moment. This is a pilot. It's going to be there for a couple months more, and we have some results. But the other initiative we have is early warning systems. So we already use a GeoGlows initiative. So if we can have better information at that level, the alerts will be better for the river flood, and maybe if we can expand it, we have a fire hazard and landslide hazards implemented.
Thank you, Virgilio. The encouraging reality is that many coordination mechanisms already exist. The challenge is that they remain fragmented across providers, institutions, financing mechanisms, and regions. Helen, could you talk about how international and regional cooperation frameworks are helping expand access to VHR, Earth observation capabilities, particularly for disaster risk reduction, early warning, and resilience applications?
Thank you, Marianne. And I'm really glad here to report to the GEO platform about whole over regional mechanism and a framework have been built during the last 3 years. Yeah, because as you all know that the VHR Earth observation data is so important for the almost more than 100 kinds of applications, and benefits from the platform from GEO, and also the cooperation with every GEO that in 2021, we started the initiative for the China-African Cooperation Center on satellite remote sensing applications. So it's a kind of regional mechanism. And till as of today, we have 19 African countries joined us, including every GO, the SMRD. And also among these countries, like NASDA, like GSSTI and ODOK, they are all the focal points of GO members. So benefit from the GO platform and like annual activities, we built our own like the governance structure and our partnership are still enlarged and our applications based on the VHR data are still deepened. And so I'm from the Land Satellite Center of our Ministry of Natural Resources of China, and we have another center, Ocean Satellite Center of applications. And totally, currently we have 25, like the land and ocean satellites, and the sensors include like the L-band SAR, CSAR, and in the future X-band SAR, and we have like 7 meters resolution satellite, 2 meters and 16 meters. So it's like we all know that the numbers of satellites really matters and really counted for the capacities of the applications. So we use this 25 Chinese satellites in total to serve over 19 African countries. And of course, this number is kept on increased. And this year we will have another like 3 or 5 countries joins us. And by this kind of mechanism, we shared our data. Normally, here you can see the pictures of our annual activities and also our trainings. And we also provide like 2 meters data free of charge. And by these 2 meters, they are free of charge. And we also like provide software and tools. And for the disaster risk management, we provide like our free service, all the types of pre-disaster imageries and 5 days of the post-disaster observations are also provided for the international community. And actually not only our African partners, but also the global partners of 37 countries. And you can see some examples here. The imageries are one of the wildfire in Algeria, and also in 2029, when flooding happened in Nigeria. And you can also see some use cases and early warning platform that RSA from Rwanda, they have done this kind of smart platforms using our data. And also we show here some like the 2 meters free of charge data covering the entire continents within the 2025. So all these services are our efforts and try to fulfill the gaps of the satellite imageries. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Amos, is there anything you'd like to add from an AfriGeo or Ghana perspective that could expand on Helen's information?
Okay, thank you. I think just to confirm some of the things that has been mentioned, because one of the issue in Africa generally is the internet connectivity. So I think the system they are using is more like a node system. So it pushes all the data. Then you have time to download it at your own time, and you can also put your own algorithms around it. Now, the good thing about it is that it allows access to all the Chinese government satellites, both for the ocean and for the land. So each country can now decide tailor-made kind of applications, whether it's about food security, it's about disasters, and it's about all other things that they need. So now one of the things that is also coming up is the fact that urban growth is becoming very important, and it's becoming very important for African countries because it's also a way of looking at revenue generation. So this kind of model is very helpful as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Amos. Turning to Annika, what lessons have emerged from European coordination mechanisms like ESA's third-party missions and Copernicus contributing missions regarding scalable public good access, including, for example, GeoGLAM?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to today's panel discussion. It's a real pleasure actually providing you insights from a data provider perspective. And maybe just very quickly, European Space Imaging has become a GEO member last year. So we proactively and provide data to GEO initiatives for free. But even before we became an associate member, we have actually provided thousands of square kilometers of VHR data to the GeoClim initiative through the European Copernicus contribution, namely the Copernicus for GeoClim initiative. And maybe this is a concept I would like to elaborate a little bit more on, but firstly, maybe 2 words about the company itself. We are a European company, as it says in the title. But actually our identity is built on global collaboration. We have been working together with Vantor, previously known as Maxa, and we are operating their satellite fleet over European territory from our ground segment, which is actually placed on the premises of the German Aerospace Center. So really part of our DNA is really public-private collaborations. And I was actually really delighted to see really before the results from the questionnaire, from the survey, and really to stress the change of requirements when it comes to intra-daily acquisitions of VHR data. And this is something we see also from our major customers like the European Space Agency and also the European Union, that really providing data like once a week or once every second week is simply not good enough for many, many applications, especially in the domain of emergency management. And this is, again, one example actually from our own operation where you can actually see that the data, once the disaster actually occurred, the data once placed can actually delivered to the final users within a single day. And that is quite impressive. This is really a game changer. Also stressing here that actually operating a constellation, we have actually up to 6 overpasses per day. And what we also see actually bringing together different sensors, we are also collaborating with other global players such Umbra and Pixel, bringing also sound hyperspectral data into our operational services. But coming back actually to our contribution to the European framework programs, namely the Copernicus contributing mission and the ESA third-party mission, both of them are major programs financed actually by these organizations to buy in commercial data. And this is really relevant because when we think about Copernicus, quite often we actually don't think about commercial data. And this data is available, it can be made available to authorized users through the Copernicus services. Our power users are actually the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service and the Emergency Service. And we provide actually every year more than 1,000 tasking satellite images to these services and many, many more also from our archive. And I think it's really relevant here to really see the opportunity to build on these services, to feed also other GEO initiatives. And thank you so much. Here's one example actually from the International Charter. And the Copernicus Emergency Service is also actually feeding into the International Charter, but the international access, the universal access is coordinated by ESA. So really see there are different players really here, and but we should really focus on the coordination of this different already existing operational services and the data which may be available through the services. So with this, I thank you.
Thank you, Annika. I think one of the clearest messages from the GEO VHR survey was that affordability and licensing remain among the most significant barriers to broader operational use globally, and expanding scalable public good access will require not only technology, but also sustainable partnerships and coordination models between providers, governments, and operational communities. We mentioned earlier that Andrew Zoli from Planet was unable to join us live today, but he did record a short video message on Planet's perspective, which we'll play now.
Hi, colleagues. I'm sorry I'm not there with you at what I'm sure is a really fantastic conference this year. Rui asked me to reflect for a few minutes on Planet's strategy for developing high-impact partnerships. And I think, as almost everyone else on this august panel must agree, that the data and other assets that organizations in the geospatial sector produce have just enormous latent potential to inform decision-making on the ground. But very frequently, we've faced this common capacity gap. Just the human skills and the technical resources and the infrastructure to assemble, to analyze, and then to have the results of analysis inform decision-making are just not evenly distributed, particularly to those people who are best positioned often to make use of the data to make real change on the ground. So for the last 10 years, we have focused really extensively on a strategy of building digital public goods. These are assets that are derived from our geospatial data and really come at the confluence of those data resources and other data sets, often commingled together with the tools of machine learning to produce science-grade, high-quality, high-resolution, in both time and space, sources of information that can really guide human judgments and human decision-making. The very first one we ever did was in the realm of mapping all the world's shallow water coral reefs from space on a platform called the Allen Coral Atlas, which is still going today. And just by making shallow water coral reefs visible and analyzing them comprehensively, we're able to encourage the formation of dozens of new marine protected areas around the world. We've since gone on to partner with organizations, including national governments like the Norwegian government, to take huge swaths of the data that we collect about, say, tropical forests and make them available as common digital assets to countless actors across 64 countries, comprehensively across the tropical belt. And even today, we're working in areas like food security and population mapping because we're trying to use the tools to help understand and measure change as fast as it's occurring. And in so doing, to help people take the kind of, as much as possible, the preemptive actions that are required to help them blunt the sharpest edges of change. So we live in this enormously volatile period, this enormously disruptive period. If we can help organizations get ahead of the rapid shifting Richter scale of change, the ricochet of the needle, every time we are able to do that, we're able to reduce the amount of suffering and property loss and damage that comes as a consequence of these disruptions. In order to do this kind of work, our real focus has been on bringing together the right kinds of scientific, technical, frontline NGO, back-end data and infrastructure providers, really in small, agile teams to work together in a very patient way over multiple years. Usually it takes us 3 or 4 years to build one of these digital public goods. We then try to license them widely and help them get established in platforms that can then be used by frontline actors with little to no geospatial data knowledge or capacity. Recent examples include things like Global Renewables Watch, a major program we undertook with the Microsoft AI for Good Lab and the Nature Conservancy, the NGO, to map all of the world's utility-grade renewable energy resources from space and to make them available as a digital public good at globalrenewableswatch.org, where anybody can see our progress on global renewable energy. We're likewise engaged in a similar collaboration with the Microsoft AI for Good team and a research team at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, or IHME, to map all the world's populations at the highest spatial and temporal resolution with the highest degrees of accuracy on a quarterly basis down to 40 meters per pixel and to make them widely available. Now, one of the reasons I mentioned this is that you'll notice that the same partner I mentioned in both collaborations was there, the Microsoft AI for Good team. That's because what we find is that high capacity partners tend to hook up again and again and again. Once you get good at understanding the culture of an organization, the way it works, what its motivations are, how does it measure success, and how do we then measure the downstream impact together in ways that ensure success, then you're in a position to be able to do that over and over and over again. So what we find is that this becomes a shared muscle memory between different organizations over time. And so even though we work with many organizations, we tend to work on big projects with some of the same ones over and over again. Of course, all of this is going to change really substantially in terms of how we work with AI. And I'll try to get to that in my next answer to the question. So thanks so much.
John, can you speak about how VHR EO strengthened disaster risk reduction and early warning for all projects?
Thank you, Marianne, and good afternoon. So my name is John Harding, and I work on the Climate Risk and Early Warning Systems Initiative, which finances early warning systems. So I'm very much on the user application side here, and I'm always fascinated participating in these kind of events to see the potential of these super resolution AI-driven imageries, and so yeah, it blows my mind on really what is the potential here. I'd maybe mention first of all two of the global trends that drive our work when it comes to the application of Earth observation systems. So of course, with working on early warning systems, we are highly dependent on satellite data. I don't need to tell this crowd, but we collectively spend $28 million per week on weather satellite data and infrastructure. And 90% of the data that drives our numerical weather predictions comes from satellites. So, and these are the tools, the models that provide all our weather and climate predictions. There's another trend which is important for our work is the fact that these systems, when they're used and applied properly, they work. So the global trend, if you look at the loss of life to extreme events, to disasters globally, is trending down. And that's because governments are able to put these systems and services in place and apply them. And when events occur, they're able to alert populations. And however, this global trend is not universally applied. There are certain countries where the risk, the application of these systems is not so effective. The casualty risk is actually going up, and these are the least developed countries and the small island developing states. So we're laser focused on trying to bridge that capacity gap and make sure that these LDCs and the SIDS have these systems in place. And in those countries, the challenges are primarily institutional. They're financial. While they're looking to access certain global and regional systems, they do develop certain digital tools, and they look at applying these weather predictions and overlaying them with risk information, which allows them to then issue alerts to the areas that require them. And the information that they use here, the data, is often historical data, is topography, physical data, environmental coverage, and socioeconomic data. And if we look at the use of Earth observation across our portfolio of projects, actually every single one of the projects we finance has some use of Earth observation. But there's no one solution, there's no one way of doing things or accessing this data, which is both a richness, but is also a challenge for us. And if I had to give one like summary takeaway of what those challenges reflect, I think upstream in the early warning value chain, when you're looking at understanding and observing the weather and the extreme events, we are pretty well there's good access, coordination, and understanding between the partners on the use of Earth observation, and it's thanks to the initiatives like the one that Helen just presented. Actually, WMO also has a group on the application of weather satellites, and they have good communication and collaboration with their members. I think the challenge is more on the downstream aspects of the early warning value chain. So that's where we see the real potential for these high resolution Earth observations. When we're looking to map at-risk populations, understanding vulnerabilities, both physical and socioeconomic, I think that's where we see the highest potential, and that's where we see the need for stronger alignment and linkages in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We've discussed operational demand for VHR, as well as existing mechanisms and challenges. The remaining question, what is GEO uniquely positioned to do next, particularly in the context of GEO's post-2025 strategy and the Cape Town Ministerial Declaration? So I have a question for each of you, and so we'll take it one by one, but if each of you could answer. If GEO could realistically accomplish one transformative action in the next 12 months regarding very high resolution Earth observation operationalization, what should it be? And how would you synergize that work with your organization's efforts that are currently underway? Let's start with Virgilio.
So, okay, we are already using VHR for a lot of stuff, but what we get most of the time is the process data, because the use of the imagery cannot be transferred to other institutions by licensing. So I will maybe propose that we can have this VHR data and imagery licensing package for a country as a pilot, maybe. So all the institutions can use the imagery at the same time without the licensing trouble, let's say. It will transform, actually, the use of this commercial data into a resilient I have it written here. Hold on. Commercial luxury into public utility, and that will help a lot for a country with a in a development phase that is actually using the information, is actually looking forward to use it on development planning, but cannot afford to pay for licensing fees for every single one of the imagery there's a different use cases scenarios, but at the long run will help a lot in development. All these will go for early warning for all initiatives, early warning, anticipatory action, risk transfer through parametric insurance. So we have a better insured all the agriculture land plots, and why not dream a little bit and have these exposure analysis for risk reduction initiatives on the local level. Because if we talk about nationwide initiatives, we can worry it out, but most of the time is the municipalities, the local authorities that will need all this information at their level on a submetric scale. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Switching hemispheres, Amos, what are you able to add on this question?
Okay, thank you very much. First, it's a difficult question. In 12 months, what to be able to do? I think the most practical step from my mind, because if you look at the discussions, there is already some initiatives, some organizations are giving free access. But the question is, What do we do with the others who don't give free access to make sure developing countries like my country, Ghana, can have access? It means we will need to find a mechanism, and I hope Bapan was here, that in every country, there is always financing for climate. So one of the things I'm thinking about is that one of the outcomes of this session will be to design a framework with which GEO acts as the lead to some pilot countries, because most of these pilot countries receive funding through the Green Climate Fund. Then we could pilot something on, it could be disaster risk, it could be food security, it could be something. Then based on the success of that, it might mean that beyond that, maybe GCF could now upscale it to a bigger funding so that it can cover the other elements of other commercial entities who have interest but will not be willing to just throw it to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to a more regional perspective, Helen?
Yeah, so actually I have written 3 points here, and I think and documents for animals is very important because we're always seeing that the VHR data solve the applications, and the applications should be successful and persuade the government like to give more powerful policies. Like we can support, we can persuade the government, the central government, to give more financial support to the certain agencies, to the Geo Institute in a certain country, and also by the successful use cases, they can get more maybe funds from the World Bank and other resources. So maybe I should say benefiting from the intergovernmental cooperation, we raise the voice of the Earth observation and the importance of the satellite imageries to the developing countries, and also the southern the south-to-south cooperation. Because as our communicates with our partners, and we feel, especially for the landlocked states and also the CIS countries, some of them, even their professional geospatial institute, they don't know how to use, they have even haven't used the satellite imageries, no matter it's high resolution or it's medium or large resolution. So so it's quite difficult situations that we also need to figure it out. So for us, we have like given a kind of a successful model of how we share our data, and also to also figure out the result, how to solve the results from the surveys. That actually we are upgrading our cloud service. And we work with UNGGKIC, it's our UN body in China, and we are upgrading our like intelligent hub, and we will have our data processing software online, and also a set AI, so a large scale analysis platform. And also we trying to involve the global stakeholders, including the private sectors and also the geo associations, to all have our public goods and also the commercial products on this platform. And this is like a kind of exploring a stage. And we also welcome the audience here to join us and to support the developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Laurent, if we look at this from an IPEO and GEO work program activity perspective, what would you have to add?
Maybe I should start by saying what Virgilio asked before is possible. It is
Okay.
possible, and we have. I mean, we've seen that happen. In fact, to your point earlier, that it's not only the value of the very high resolution data is not only about the disaster management itself, but also these other sectors, environment, climate. We actually, one of the small digital twin experiments we did was for Accra in Ghana as a gesture towards the new Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat, because we have a collaboration with them. We handed over the data to any institution, any government entity in Ghana, not only the digital twin, but also the underlying data. So it is possible to license with multi-use, for multiple government entities, this data. But I think together with GEO, and I think GEO did already, the Secretary did already a great job by doing this survey, because it really brings a lot of interesting results we should look at carefully. Clearly, I would say for us in the UN, this platform that you see there, this concept of an interagency coordination platform is there. We can't avoid it. The Internal Oversight Office is telling us you have to do it. The UN General Assembly is discussing our work plan for 2027, and this is part of it for our office. We need to bring together the community, but I think down there under that management and coordination with end users part, I think working closely together with the GEO Secretariat is what I would like to see happen between us as UN and GEO, to make sure that users' needs are reflected, to make sure that we can investigate that ideal licensing, let's say, set of licensing conditions that we want to see in our negotiation with companies going forward when we establish these contracts. And I'm talking about 50, 100 contracts in the next years, not 2 or 3 like we did in the last 20 years. And that's going to be a huge challenge. We can only work together on that. So I would like to see that collaboration happen. And I think with GEO Secretariat, we can co-design this to be something ideal going forward. That's what I would like to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Annika?
Well, I think I would just follow up what Laurent just say. It's fantastic to really build on existing mechanism and contribution to GEO. And I think there's actually really a lot of experience we have collided and we could really share, and we can also bring forward. I think it's also very vital what John mentioned before, that there's still a lot to be done when it comes to the downstream sector and really furthering knowledge when it comes to multi-hazard risk analysis and post-disaster mapping, which is actually not a direct emergency response. And I think also there, for example, supporting the scientific community is still really pivotal. Also there, for example, data could be accessed, VHR data can be accessed for research purposes through the ESA third-party mission program, and I really invite you to do so. When it comes to operational requirements, also there, it's really important to share experience to make sure that a multi-sensor constellation to provide a 24/7 emergency service is really nothing trivial to build. And here also the experience of the European Union, especially of the Copernicus Emergency Service, is really crucial. Again, and also what Laurent mentioned before, I mean, we were starting off with a handful of VHR service providers, data providers. I mean, this is radically changing these days. So I think it's really important to make sure we can use the already existing service under the current also financial framework. We use the already existing resources at hand, and then also look forward to really see how with these different initiatives can really come together and can really bring the relevant data and knowledge to the end users. And I think with this one, I finish my statement.
Thank you, Annika. And we have another video from Andrew at Planet.
I wanted to take a moment to follow up answer and to speak for a moment about this extraordinary moment of emerging planetary intelligence that we're all collectively watching and participating in, being born in front of our eyes. This merger of Earth observation data and large AI models that promises to really fundamentally transform not just what people can do with Earth observation, but how many people can actually do it? You know, it's the closest analog I think we have is to something like the Google moment. You know, when search engines first appeared on the web, they had many consequences. They dramatically expanded the reach that most people could find new sources of information online. But a less well appreciated fact is they just dramatically increased the number of users who could use the web in the first place. Just by making it easier to use, we dramatically lower the cost of entry, and we dramatically accelerate and expand the circle of participation. And the AI moment is certainly that moment now arrived as it relates to Earth observation data. And we are seeing this happen and actively working on it right now, while we continue to build digital public goods that monitor all kinds of phenomena around the world. The major focus of our work now is to plug those digital public goods, those scientific data assets that index the Earth, into these large language models so that we can take advantage of those models' abilities to continue to improve their reasoning capabilities. The more of those fundamental layers of information that we add, not just to large language models, but to large Earth models, the better the compounded, self-compounding reasoning capability is becoming. And that is incredibly exciting, because as we add population data, as we add climate data, as we add public health data, as we add food security data, all things that are coordinated through the activities of groups like this one into those large Earth models, those large reasoning models, we're going to allow people not just to ask different kinds of questions about the world around them, but to live in a new kind of relationship to the world around them. Governance of the world begins by making it understandable to people and helping people understand the consequences of their actions and also the forces of change that are acting not just on the world as a whole, but on the places where they live. So this is a major focus of ours. We're working directly with the organizations that are proffering the big major AI models, the Anthropics and Googles and Microsofts of the world, to ensure that those models natively speak high resolution Earth observation data and can reason about them in new and compelling ways. We think of this as an inherent public good, and this is a powerful, I think, opportunity, not just for private sector organizations like Planet or public sector institutions, but for governing bodies like this one to coordinate all of that activity. If I weren't working at Planet, that's all I would be trying to do right now, because the aggregate public good that comes from these models being able to natively speak the language of the Earth is extraordinary, and I think is going to redound to our collective benefit as we try to navigate these extraordinarily difficult sustainability challenges in the decades to come.
And John, you have the privilege of following Andrew.
Thank you, Marianne. And I think the question on the role of GEO is also a nice opportunity, also for me to reiterate my appreciation to GEO for convening us here today and allowing us to be part of these discussions. We're not always involved in discussions around the Earth observation community, so it's always appreciated. Yeah, and so for us, it's very clear there's no linearity between the availability of Earth observations and these new technologies, and so the increase on the one hand in the availability and their application in countries. So we clearly need to put much more emphasis on translating the availability of this information into our operation at country level. So that's very clear for us. It was interesting, actually, when we had discussions recently with the countries that finance this work, so the countries that finance early warning systems as part of their development aid. And they identified a number of priorities moving forward. And one of the 3 priorities was specifically in the application of emerging technologies. And if we're going to achieve our collective global ambitions on early warning, be it early warning for all or targets like the Sendai targets and other, they said that we're going to have to use these emerging technologies to allow certain countries to leapfrog, and move forward around in their development of these systems. And actually, we've developed a specific work stream actually on the application of technologies across the financing of our projects. And we'll be very keen to see a dedicated work stream on application of Earth observation, and that would hopefully then translate into an operational reality, more systematically, both in the projects that we finance, but also the ones that then we scale up with the Green Climate Fund, the World Bank, and other financing mechanisms. If you can tell Bapon, by the way, that I mentioned the scaling up framework with GCF, it was specifically in my notes that I had to mention it if he was chairing this panel today. And so of course, if we're going to be successful in applying this, this new work stream, we're going to have to get a lot better in documenting what is working well, where gaps remain, showcasing good pilots and what can be replicated, and helping us with a lot of the analytical work on where and how Earth observations are being applied effectively. And these are the kind of spaces where we see institutions like GEO playing an important role. And I think even the good example of the survey that was carried out is going to also help drive and will be very effective for us in our operations. So thank you.
Thank you, John. So what we've heard here throughout this discussion is that the GEO community is not asking simply for greater access to imagery, but for operational Earth intelligence ecosystems that can support real-world resilience outcomes. I think we heard 3 key themes emerge. First, GEO's comparative advantage is in coordination, not duplication, working to convene providers, users, regional and national GEOs, and operational organizations around shared implementation challenges. Second, there are significant opportunities for this coordination to accelerate disaster risk reduction and early warning for all efforts, particularly as demand grows for operational capabilities. And third, the GEO post-25 strategy points to an important role for GEO in supporting operational readiness through dialogues focused on licensing, interoperability, and capacity building activities that can help translate VHR Earth observations into sustained societal benefits. With that, we are running a few minutes behind, but we do want to bring in the perspectives from across the GEO community, including all of you as GEO members, participating organizations, and associates. We've heard about the growing demand, the existing coordination efforts, and the opportunities and challenges around operational implementation. Many of these realities look different depending on regional context, institutional capacity, and operational needs. So I'd like to invite those colleagues in the room to share both the barriers and successes you are seeing in your own regions and organizations, as well as the challenges from your perspective that remain as the most significant, whether that's around access, licensing, infrastructure, financing, or technical capability. Where are you already seeing successful operational use of VHR data today? And what would help countries and organizations move from pilot activities towards sustained implementation? Specifically focusing on what role could GEO play that is currently missing today? In the interest of hearing from multiple perspectives, I would kindly ask that you keep your interventions and your questions as concise as possible. I also want to acknowledge we are approaching 1 o'clock, which was our scheduled end time. And we recognize that some of you may have other commitments or meetings, so certainly we'll go a few minutes over, but please feel free to exit if you need to go to another meeting. And with that, are there any questions from the floor? Jana?
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, thanks to all. Sorry, I don't have a unique perspective, but this leaves me kind of partially satisfied, wanting more. And I'm wondering if I'm leading the witness here. If you guys can conclude on a more action-oriented note, whereby this serves as the hook to take the next step towards something Amos said, develop a conceptual framework of what this thing that GEO could help facilitate, coordinate looks like, where, Laurent, you clearly can support the discussions in terms of how your model can help us build an extension beyond the UN missions to countries alone. I totally get the user connection that you can help facilitate, but also wherever that does not reach countries with their multiple agencies, what could that link look like? Earlier on, when we were developing the proposal for the new strategy, we toyed with the idea of GEO kind of coordinating a multi-user license so that multiple agencies within a single government could be served through that license. That's a standard license. I think it's worth picking up on that, but also then investigate. And I totally get where Andrew Zoli is coming from. It's exciting to kind of be able to get this environmental variables through, easy access platforms, but we also hear certain countries wanting to develop their own workflows. And it's not a level playing field. And so how do we meet these various users within these countries where they're at in terms of their technical capacity? Who provides the assistance to develop their capacity to use these advanced technologies? I think that question is still, we didn't quite talk about. We talk about access and license. But that's where I would love for you, moderator, to maybe kind of push us towards the place where we have to do something about this. If we are talking next 12 months, and then the next time ministers get together and say, what have you done lately since the Cape Town strategy, we can actually maybe bring something forward.
Thank you, Jana, for that very concise question. It is a big question for the panel. I suspect it is one we won't give you a fully satisfactory answer to today. And I am confident that both the team up here and your panelists and your team and Medea and others will be able to bring something to the broader community. But I do want to ask if any of our panelists would like to respond to Jana's question or charge.
Anyway, yeah, because because I'm wearing several hats, because in Ghana too, I have to be able to say something. Now, I think we have an opportunity here because the cruise program, WMO, and nationally, every country have this, the GMET, the National Meteorological Section. We just need to have a meeting. We just have to say that there has to be a follow-up meeting where we sit with the team here, with some selected countries, with the Green Climate Fund, and synthesize the mechanism. I think it's all about the mechanism. How will in the end, if the money can, how will it go? Where, in which direction? I think once we can tick those dots, then we can have a way. Because I think that is very important. Aside all the other systems that are providing the platforms, the data, I think we need to look at the bigger picture of bringing in some resource to drive everything. Thank you.
Well, since Jana kind of pointed at me, I also have to say something. I think we can start tomorrow. We already start studying the licensing models. I have some interns on checking out multiple companies' licensing models. We have two concrete examples with Maxar now, Vantor, and Airbus about how a multi-agency license looks like in a UN, where we can actually share across the whole UN system and with the country's institutions. If we purchase that so-called multi-agency license, which is a bit more expensive, we don't have the money for it always, but if we can, then that is already there. So let's look at that licensing model together. And then let's see if we need to add something to it. And then let's make that the model of negotiation for any future contract we try to establish. That's one very concrete thing. In overall, I would also like to say that we have to get better at spending donor money and public money more wisely. I don't think this was done well in the past. We can only do it if we work well together. And again, I can talk for hours about examples of how that was not done well in the past. Maybe that's why we need to have that meeting, also with these funds and everybody who's putting money in the pot, because there's a lot more to improve on that. So I would suggest we start with that. And again, on our side, the contracting and negotiations will continue. This is a very long process with every company, but I think we need to do it, and we need the user's perspective. That's where I think the Geo Secretariat and the Geo community can help us feed that. Because again, as it was pointed out, countries need the data to embed it in their workflows. It's the time when we were providing PDFs from Europe is over. I think countries have the expertise inside the country to take the data, the raw data, and do whatever they want with it. We just need to make that easier and enable it and bring the cost down big time. And that's where I would like to go. And I'm saying that after 30 years in trying to do this better. Thanks.
Maybe just add on two sentences also on the data licensing. Also from my experience, I mean, it's really exciting times because also on the data access and licensing, there's a lot of changes ongoing these days on the market. For example, as mentioned, we are collaborating with an American company called Umbra, providing very high spatial SAR imagery, and they're basically having an open license. So once the data is acquired, you can basically redistribute the data, which is fantastic. And it's really kind of also challenging existing paradigm on the market. So I think it's also interesting to really bring in the experience from the private sector to really, again, have this dialogue and really, again, engage together with the institution to really see how we can set up a perfect framework model to really accommodate the different needs.
Yeah, for me, I also want to add maybe two sentences because as I talked about, here we select the GO members and every GO to host our data and also like the training courses and personnel exchange each year because we hope that maybe CAXA and our contribution can be taken as our a new force or maybe or contributor to GO community. And also, as you may all know that Chinese government and the GO Secretariat has signed an MOU. So we hope that not only for the multilateral cooperation, but also for this kind of implementations of the corporations, we can also pay much attention to the satellite imageries, especially the VHR imageries. And second is because as Jana mentioned, that we need like take the real action. So maybe we can like as we all know that not all the scenarios, not all the applications need the VHR, but we do need the multi-sensors to have a better analysis and to provide more detailed suggestions to our decision makers. So whether the GO experts and GO Secretary can organize maybe some working groups and to formulate like some kind of handbooks or menus to guide our users, to guide our members on how to use the different types of satellite data to fulfill the aims of objectives of their national projects or tasks. I think that will be very helpful to really to enhance the capacity buildings of our members. Thank you.
We are actually would like to provide some of the contributions as a private sector, as Professor Amos mentioned that frequency as well as the resolution can contribute to the model modes, as we are actually operating an OSE constellation, which is in abbreviation of Open Space Ecosystem, that would like to to contribute our excessive data, for training the model, as we know that more data contributed together to help the model to be more accurate, to be more concise, based on the archive. Based on the archive data, would be very beneficial for such further prediction. Also, as a private sector, we would like to suggest if GEO can provide the link as a platform for us to have a better chance to contribute to such kind of data training, and to link maybe other resources as well. That would be very awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind introducing yourself briefly? Sorry, I should have asked you to do that before you stated your question.
Yes, I'm Luca Ling from Starvision Aerospace. Is actually a private commercial AI satellite company based in Hangzhou, where in 2024 GEO was held. So we actually implementing the AI processing in orbit, as well as we developed kind of such OSE constellation for the Earth observation, mostly remote sensing, including VHR as well as the hyperspectral ones, which also including top of the world, very high class data quality, and that these data, if can be linked with other collaborations with for the models training, that would be quite beneficial. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Given your invitation, I just wanted to make sure, or your offer, I wanted to make sure everyone knew who was talking. Did anyone on the panel want to respond to that last comment or question? Okay.
Was it a question? I think it was a contribution, maybe.
Yes.
So they are requesting us to have a mechanism that if a private sector say, okay, we have some data free, where do we push it? So I think this is something the Secretariat within few days can fix. And we would like the Secretariat to also contact them, exchange some emails, and that can be done. So at least we have more like some concrete steps ahead of schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. So we appreciate the valuable insights and perspectives. It's clear there are common challenges and significant experience to build on and opportunities to leverage. As we draw to a close, demand is clear. The survey makes that clear. The operational demand already exists across GEO community, and this includes the sub-meter and near real-time access. The challenge is broader than just imagery access. It's increasingly about licensing, interoperability, processing capacity, and sustainable implementation ecosystems. There is a role for GEO to play here. GEO's comparative advantage can be coordination, convening and bridging across providers, users, operational agencies, and implementation communities. And as Jana pointed out, the big next challenge is, what is the role for GEO? What do we do next? And GEO is not just the Secretariat. GEO is all of us. So it is the members, it is the participating organizations, it is the associates. So GEO Secretariat can certainly facilitate dialogues to create space to connect users and providers on interoperability, pilot implementation activities, and licensing frameworks. And GEO, all of us, the community, are uniquely situated to synthesize the survey results and outcomes from this session to help encourage increased dialogue around this issue. and there are opportunities for geo-supported demonstration and pilot projects and frameworks. I believe today's discussion has reinforced that the understanding and need for achieving fit-for-purpose, very high-resolution Earth observation is key to Earth intelligence for all. The opportunity for GEO to help ensure those capabilities become more coordinated, available, and actionable globally is high. So I'd like to thank our panelists, all of you, and the GEO Secretariat for organizing this discussion. And as we break for lunch, I would encourage you to continue the conversation if you head upstairs to the attic or wherever you're having lunch, continue the conversations on this topic. And we will look to the Secretariat and all of you to identify next steps for implementing this exciting opportunity. With that, we will end this session, resuming at 1400 Central European Time for those online. And for those in the room, you can be back in your next session at 1400. Thank you very much, and many thanks to our panelists for all of their preparation, and to the GEO Secretariat for organizing this session. Thank you, everyone.